Hey, what's going on, everybody? As always, I hope everybody's doing exceptionally well. Hope everybody's enjoying their day. As always, I want to thank those for tuning in to the Building Community Trust channel. The site is dedicated to those that are interested in empowering themselves to learn the laws of the state, local, federal government, and also keeping up on what's going on with the police and the issues in the communities that we serve and that we live in each day. For those of us new, as always, thank you for tuning in. And check out all the material that's out. I just did a video on the court systems and procedures, talking about the different types of courts that judges and trials fall under. Very important to know these things so we can educate ourselves on the process of the criminal justice system as it relates to the judicial aspect of it. For those who has been listening and tuning in and sharing and subscribing, thank you. I'm never too great, in the sense of being humble and thanking those who's joining in and tuning in to what I'm doing. And those, as always, please share and subscribe. Please spread the word over to those who are interested in listening and learning about the stuff that's going on. Today, I'm just going to touch on some things with the Andrew Brown Jr. case. We all seen the news that District Attorney of North Carolina is not going to it's not going to charge deputies. This is in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and the deputies in that area that was in the shooting and the killing of Andrew Brown Jr. Pasquotank County. I might have said it wrong, but he's not charging them. He don't feel his need to charge them for what happened to Andrew Brown Jr. in reference to the deadly shooting of him as he was fleeing officers. So we got in a case where this is something that we got to dig into in reference to what's going on. I had some interesting facts from other things that I've seen, looked up, did a little research. My opinion, I think that it needs to be more research and more investigation done. I think also you might need to get a federal investigation started, maybe from Department of Justice, DOJ, to investigate and also look into this, because there's some interesting things that I see. And again, when it comes to the body cam footage or the footage that officers have to wear, that's going to be an accountability tool to actually see what's going on. In certain aspects of the sources that we read, they're going to say certain things of the different angles of the case. But from what I pulled up one source, and it says that the facts show that Mr. Brown was fleeing from officers. And it's some interesting things. There's a case that I found in North Carolina. I think it's in North Carolina that I'm going to talk about a little bit, and I'm going to put it in the comments. But it also has a similar situation where an officer shot at an individual from fleeing from the officer when they, trying to get away. And it says that the biggest aspect of this, where he was shot in the back of the head, and 5 times he was getting shot at. 5, the autopsy says 5 bullets, 1 in the back of the head, right around the neck, base of the neck area. But it was saying that he was fleeing. So when someone shooting from behind, he was leaving. He wasn't going towards the officers. He would have had more frontal wounds from the front area. This happened around April 21st, and it was in response to a warrant. I want to make sure I'm correct. It was to carry out warrants and drug-related charges. So he was fleeing, and officers felt like, I guess he was trying to get away from the officers, and he had his hands visible in the wheel, according to the source. And there was 5 body cam videos that I guess are not made public or still in investigation. So in that case, there's questions about why the officers are not being charged. I think needs to be done in the sense of solidifying the evidence and making sure that it goes under these laws and some of these policies. Again, we got to look at the policy of North Carolina in reference to the law enforcement area, sheriffs, deputies, and stuff like that for Elizabeth City. The Pasquotank, I keep saying it wrong, but those officers that were in their jurisdiction. So I'm going to jump over to a source. Talks about the use of force when it pertains to a deadly vehicle. Again, I'm going to put it in the commentary, in the comments. I'm sorry, and it's www.aele.org/law. prohibitions or restrictions on shooting at a motor vehicle. So these are different states I'm looking at, and I like to say, I'm gonna put in the comments different states and different aspects of where when can officers fire into a vehicle. We got Chicago, Cincinnati, Denver, Detroit, Houston, Los Angeles, Portland, San Diego. This is just some of the sources, but some of the places that they research. But interesting enough, for example, Chicago, policy is firing at or into and moving vehicles only authorized to prevent death or great bodily harm to the sworn member or another person. When confronted with an oncoming vehicle and that vehicle is only force used against them, sworn members will move out the vehicle's path. And we want to talk about something called the duty to retreat. That's one place. And also the caseload where it would determine this policy was in October 2000, the Haggerty and Russ police chases in 1999. Another place that's interesting, Denver, it says policy there, officers may not fire at or from moving vehicles except in self-defense or defense of another form with what the officer reasonably believes to be the use of or imminent use of deadly physical force. Reasonably. So they make that police discretion to fire when that police officer feels life is in danger for himself or others. In this case, it doesn't apply to Andrew Brown Jr.'s case because he was fleeing from. Another interesting thing, I think in Houston and also Detroit says officers cannot fire at or from a moving vehicle, period. It was due to Detroit enter a federal consent decree with the Justice Department in 2003, July. It may be updated from there, but it's a use of force policy after several police shootings. So their police shootings were so high in 2000, and during that time they had the nation's highest rate of fatal officer involved shootings. Like I said, this is a little bit older, so it may have changed since then, but this is what I found so far. Houston, their policies, department does not prohibit an officer from shooting at a vehicle, according to a spokesperson. The department's longstanding policy states that an officer will not justify the use of deadly force by intentionally placing themselves in front of a moving vehicle. So and again, we talk about states. Each state or each city or jurisdiction has different rules. So again, that's why we talking about courts. When we talking about federal law enforcement, they have different rules and different policies. What they do federally, statewide, local, jurisdiction areas, metropolitan, they're all different rules, and they have a state guidelines where all these local or even city jurisdictions follow. And the state codes have state law, then they have the city law. So their policies may differ between which location, from a metropolitan area like Houston, Dallas, LA, New York, Atlanta, Miami. You can go on and on. They may have different policies from something like smaller cities like Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Newport, Portsmouth, Virginia, Decatur, DeKalb County. I can go, Daytona Beach, we can go Mobile, smaller cities. It's not big cities. They may have different policies. So this is why it's important to learn not only state laws, but also learn the laws of the local and city ordinances that's there. So that's interesting facts. I think it's interesting that these two cities, Detroit and Houston in particular, that they don't have, officers can't fire into a moving vehicle. Their duty to retreat is to get out the way. Get out the way. And how did that work when you got, every scenario is different. Maybe officers can get out the way of the vehicle. Some can get out the way. How does that work when the policy doesn't allow officers to fire into the vehicle, or, if they fire unjustly into the vehicle? So those are some interesting things that I found for that source. And like I said, I posted in there, but there's something to think about. Like every place is different, Also, when it comes to North Carolina, it's some interesting things that I've reading here. I'm just going to try to find some highlights and think about, how this is General Assembly of North Carolina. And this is some of the session laws and bills that were passed in the state aspect of it. What, some of the stipulations of use of force. When we think about use of force, simply is from a civilian aspect to a law enforcement aspect. When they say law enforcement, they're sworn officers. They take oaths. They've been certified through the state or through a post. Each state could be different with the names, but there's usually a state certification that's federally, signed off all over, that this officer has been trained and equipped to serve in the capacity of a sworn peace officer or law enforcement officer. So they have certain things that back them up, qualified immunity. I think we talked about in the video before. And therefore, they operate under certain pretensions of when it comes to deadly force. Now as a private citizen, this is good to learn your laws as well, because they have stuff in here, and especially when I'm looking for North Carolina, where you can operate in certain aspects of private citizens when it comes to the defense and self-defense, or use of force when it comes to your life in danger or someone else's life. So I'm just going to look at 14 TAC 51.3, use of force in defense of person, relief from criminal or civil liability. This is for North Carolina. A person is justified in using force except deadly force against another when and to the extent that the person reasonably believes that the conduct is necessary to defend himself or herself, or another against the other's imminent use of unlawful force. However, a person is justified in use of deadly force and does not have a duty to retreat in any place he or she has a lawful right to be if either or the following applies. He or she reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself or another. That's one thing. So like I said, I'm going to post this as well, www.ncleg.net, sessions 2011. But this is some interesting things here. And those who live in North Carolina statewide, I empower those to really look into the laws and understand where you live, because again, it's different. Justification, this is 14 TAC 51.4, justification for defensive force not available. The justification described in both of these laws, 14 TAC 51.2 and 14 TAC 51.3, is not available to a person. This is when a defensive force not available who uses defensive force tactics was attempting to committing or escaping after commission of a felony. Provokes the use of force against himself or herself. However, the person who initially provokes the use of force against himself or herself will be justified in using defensive force if either of the following occur. The force used by the person who was provoked is so serious that the person using defensive force reasonably believes that he or she was in imminent danger or death or serious bodily harm. The person using defensive force had no reasonable means to retreat, and the use of force which is likely to cause death or serious bodily harm to the person who was provoked was the only one way to escape. An interesting fact there, because again, what did Andrew Brown, and again, this is I'm still looking into what's going on, but if he's fleeing the scene, right, and he's leaving, what provoked the officers to use deadly force? If we go back to the source, the North Carolina District Attorney's contention that Brown used his vehicle as a deadly weapon against the deputies who fatally shot him. According to prosecutors and the district attorney, he said they found that the facts of this case clearly illustrate the officers who used deadly force and Andrew Brown Jr. did so reasonably and only when the violent felon used a deadly weapon to place their lives in danger. But this is where the videos come in, where his hands were visible on the wheel, and he was tempted to escape, and the fact that he was shot in the back of the head indicates that shots were coming from his rear as he was tempted to leave the scene. Like I said, that's going back to just from reading that source. This is just that one source, that how did he provoke deadly force from the officers? In the sense, and I'm going to go to the next case where this is also done, to where officer shot and killed, well, not actually killed the guy, but she shot him in the sense of him fleeing. This might be a little different, and that's why we got to look into the facts. But for him to, if he's attempting to committing or escaping after commission of a felony, that's what this falls as defensive force, justification of defensive force not available. Not available. He was attempting to flee from a warrant from arrest, and in a sense his hands on the wheel, but he decided to flee. In the sense of the officers, were they in danger? And if they were, was it enough to where it's imminent bodily harm or someone to someone else? Now in the case, again, this is why the body cam footage is so important, because in that case was he about to injure someone else, civilians in the area, Was there other aspects of people getting hurt when he fled that they feel like they have to fire to shoot him and kill him? Was there off threat to the officers themselves that they feel like that they was in imminent danger of bodily harm or death that they felt like they needed to fire and shoot? Again, this is where the body cam footage comes in. According to the source, they said they reviewed it and they didn't find any reason to not, feel like the officers were justifiable in using deadly force, shooting 5 times, killing Mr. Brown Jr. 21st, it says it says here the deputy shouted commands to him. He backed his car up and drove across the vacant lot, which is next door to his home, and they were shooting to the vehicle. Again, if he's backing up, was officers in danger? Was there someone getting hurt or about to die? Again, that's what the body cam footage. Their body cams are able to review or see all of those things. And in the aspects of the laws, were they justified in shooting Mr. Brown and killing him? So that was an interesting thing, looking at like I said, they're looking at those session bills they passed in the state law, in the sense of, did he feel like was it their offensive force? Was their duty to retreat? Even in the sense of, we're looking at the previous other states and they had their duty to get out the way. In the sense of North Carolina, are they under that same aspect of duty to retreat where they can get out the way? If that car was backing up, as they said it was, were they able to get out the way to prevent them getting hit before they fired their weapon? What was this? What was the real question is, what was provoked them to fire their weapon? Is the laws, the policies of that law enforcement agency allow to deadly force? They felt their lives were threatened by the moving vehicle. And when I'm thinking moving vehicle, that's someone coming towards you or behind you. So if he was trying to reverse and run them over, that could probably be deadly force authorized because their lives were threatened. Just the same if the vehicle was coming at them forwardly, he was coming at them and driving towards either someone else or the officers. But what evidence and body cam footage shows that he did that for them to shoot him as 5 times, and they also shot him in the back of the base of the head. So interesting things there. Again, I feel like that DOJ should open up an investigation and look into this more. Hopefully we'll see the lawyers and the courts will look into that. I'm going to jump to another case, Brosseau versus Haugen. I'm going to put it in the comments. 543 U.S. 194 2004. So this is a basic case where this is in, I'm looking at, I read it earlier. This is in Washington, Puyallup, Washington police. And he was shot, Kenneth Haugen, in the back as he was attempting to flee from law enforcement officers in his vehicle. Brosseau versus Haugen, 543 U.S. 194 2004. And he was fleeing from Officer Brosseau, Rochelle Brosseau, and she attempted to try to stop him. And just, you can read the case yourself, but basically, Haugen went to start a fight with a couple of people in the neighborhood at his mother's house. Police was called. He started running from him, and he hops into his truck, pickup, or his Jeep, and she goes in to try to get him out. And he was looking. She yelled commands, had her gun out. Thought she was getting a weapon. He was getting a weapon out. She yelled commands. He didn't comply, and told everyone in the area to stay in their vehicles. She attempted to try to get him out the vehicle, broke the glass. I think he took the gun and hit her, and he started to she fired her weapon. She fired a weapon, and he drove, and he survived, but he drove. He swerved across the neighbor's lawn, continued down the street. She felt she needed to shoot because other officers could have been in danger of civilians. She made the call, her police discretion. She felt she needed to use her weapon, and she shot and brought the Jeep to a halt. He suffered from a collapsed lung. He was airlifted to the hospital. He survived the shooting, and he pleaded guilty to the felony of eluding officers. Talking about qualified immunity and the fact of why did she shoot? She felt the need to shoot due to other officers' lives and other civilians in the area because she's in the neighborhood. Court of Appeals recognized it. Constitutional question in this case is governed by the principles enunciated in Tennessee versus Garner, which is another case that was used as well. Objective reasonableness with regard to deadly force, and that is unreasonable for an officer to seize and unarmed and undangerous suspect by shooting him dead. So, if you continue to read the case, qualified immunity shields an officer from suit when she makes a decision that, even if constitutionally deficient, reasonably misapprehends the law governing the circumstances she confronted. Saucier versus Cots, 533 U.S. And it protects officers from sometimes hazy border between excessive and acceptable force. This is where the qualified immunity comes into play. And this is where people got to really look into these things. And in this case, she shot him due to, she felt she needed to make a decision due to what was going on. It could have been he attacked her. When he attacked her, he felt, okay, he's a threat because she got attacked. I think that he took the butt of the gun and hit her. She used her gun to break the glass, and he took the gun and hit her with the butt of the same gun she had. So at that point, she felt that he was a threat to the point where, okay, now not only is he attacked me and caused injury, but, you know what I'm saying, not serious about injury, but also she felt like her other fellow officers and civilians were in danger. That's why she pulled her weapon out and shot him in the back as he was driving away. So in this case, I think this is also a interesting case that they may reference if they ever get it to trial. But in the case of charging the officers criminally, they feel like that Andrew Brown Jr. was not this shooting from the deputies. They feel like he didn't need to charge. And again, we want to see the body cam footage. You want to look at the evidence. We want to see why was a deadly force authorized to shoot Andrew Brown? That's the question I want to know. The body cam footage, the evidence on scene, the witnesses, what provoked officers to shoot Andrew Brown Jr. in the back of the head, especially in the back of the base of the head. He was driving away. He went to a vacant lot. What was the need? Were they trying to stop the vehicle so he won't get away? Was they attacked? Was it seriously body harm? Was there imminent danger for them or others or civilians? What was it that they feel they need to shoot? That's the question. And if so, was it justified under the North Carolina state laws, under the circumjurisdiction, under the policy? Was it justified for them to shoot him at many times, especially if he's his hands on the vehicle? Now, in the sense of escaping for the loot of the warrant, you know what I'm saying? That's a charge, yes. Now he's committing a crime, eluding officers from a warrant. However, was there, justifiable force being used to kill him? Was there another way? I mean, again, and a lot of people want to use emotion and take sides and say, first time an officer shoots a black African-American male, it's automatically that the officer's wrong. Now, this is the part where emotions meet reality, because now people got to look at the emotion aspect and look into the law. Now, if it's a law, like we go back to the other stuff I was talking about, where they say if the body cam does show Andrew Brown trying to put seriously bodily harm or death to officers or others, and it's North Carolina law states that they need to use deadly force, in that case, the shooting was justified. Again, we don't know because we don't see the body cam footage. Maybe only certain individuals saw it, and they made the call to feel like they wasn't charging to be pressed on those officers. But if it was that, and it was justifiable, then it was justifiable. The law is, and again, somebody told me that just because the law is a law doesn't mean it's right. But in that case, if the law standard where they felt needed to justify shooting Andrew Brown Jr., and he uses a weapon as a deadly vehicle, whether in reverse or forward, and that's the case, then it was justifiable. But if it was not the case, and even if so, if it is written in black and white, and the body cam footage shows that he did not use his weapon as a deadly weapon and uses somebody's vehicle as a deadly weapon, and he did not put those officers or others in seriously bodily harm or danger or death, and they shot him, then that's when we need to, as courts, the DOJ, other of investigative entities that are there to file an investigation and look into those things and put that thing on trial and get those officers charged and convicted for using their powers in a way that could have been done in a different way, especially when the policies and laws are in place. Again, we talk about qualified immunity and the fact that it protects officers from their border hazy understanding or police discretion used incorrectly or not so much in the right way. That protects officers from getting civilly sued, or whatever the case may be, civilly sued. But in this case, was the shooting justified? Was it? And that's the question we are trying to find out. So in that case, it goes to studying and looking at these things and understanding what the law says. So that's kind of my take on it. I think that DOJ, Department of Justice, needs to go ahead and file a federal law enforcement investigation into this and take a clearer look and look at the body cam footage and really look at it. And if it's taken to trial and those officers get off for qualified immunity, we can, just like they did in Brosseau versus Haugen and other ones, Tennessee versus Garner. And if the facts are not clear, or the law was not applied correctly, we talked about in the courts last video, then we can, as the court system, should be able to take it up to the appeals and other places to get looked at and get a final dissolution in the sense of the verdict and what happens to those officers. And then again, and this is the things that people don't want to hear. If it was justified and the laws fall in place, whether right, wrong, and different to our personal moral standards, the law says they were justified from the facts of the law and the video cam footage and the evidence, and it shows that he was using his vehicle as a deadly weapon, and he was trying to put hurt, harm, and danger against the officers and other people around him. And it says, and that law is matching, is justified, clear cut and day. And although it's not always right, it is a law. And that's the thing. That's the caveat, and that's what the district attorney's assuming that I'm assuming he looked at the case and he's looking at the facts, and he made his best judgment in saying that those officers those shootings were justified. So I think more needs to be dug into and looked at, and not just thrown to the side. But then that's up to the other people to get involved, the Department of Justice and other people to push for that to be looked at. So that's what I think. Sad enough, another African American male lost to the police, whether right, wrong, and indifferent. And this is why the reform bill should be really looked into and really scrutinized in the sense before it passed, so we can understand the context of it and understand how can it fit into the law enforcement agencies around the country, and see we can implement the deadly force continuum, utilize it, and it's a fine balance, because again, we got to be objective and look at protection of officers and of civilians. What is that fine definitive line and balance in the sense of protecting officers from their jobs? Interesting article I may post as well talks about how the law enforcement realm is dangerous, and officers have to be protected as well to serve, but also how can we make sure civilians are protected from those who do use unreasonable deadly force. In some cases, not really taking law from paper to practicality. Using what you learn in academy and the laws learned and applying it day by day. In some situations that I do agree that sometimes the law, it don't always meet reality. It's in this nick of the moment. When you got a car coming at you, or guns pulled on you, when you're getting in a firefight, these officers gunned down and stuff all the time, because there's a fine definitive balance between living and dying in the law enforcement realm. It's a fine definitive balance when it comes to dealing with the public and their hate for law enforcement officers. And anytime your head is going to have to be on the swivel, as I said before, to make sure that, you go home at the end of the day. So sometimes it's tough to make a decision. In that case where, example of the Brosseau versus Haugen case, where she felt like she needed to make a split second decision to fire the weapon due to her encounter with Mr. Haugen, and he already injured her and also sped or fled from her, in the sense of, her trying to get away, and she shot him, and, that could take a turn for a risk, for hurting other folks or killing them. So it's a split second decision to make. So I just, from what I've seen here so far, again, I've just kind of get some sources, I think in this case, we should definitely take some more time to look into the body cam footage and publicize, in a sense, when it's ready to have people see it and get another look at it, get another look at the angle, and understand whether if there should be a trial put on, or if it's justifiable by the Elizabeth City, the state of North Carolina and their laws, and justifiable within that jurisdiction between their city ordinance laws. So that's my take on it. As always, the stuff will continue to come out. I'll post the stuff in the comments. If you got any comments or things you want to say, please leave it in there. If I'm off, as always, I'm open to learning and putting stuff in perspective from those who have more experience or dealt with things differently. But I feel as though taking an objective approach, looking at other case law and looking at the state laws and the city ordinances of what's going on can help take out clarify and make clear on what actually happened, in the sense of when all the evidence comes out and the body cam footage comes out, you can sit there and look at clearly, see what exactly happened. And you can look at other case laws similar to it and see what the results were, and being able to see how was it supposed to go down? Was the person justified in doing what they're doing? Was the person wrong? You know, we talk about George Floyd. You know what I'm saying? Even the fact that he was wrong in his actions, it didn't justify Derek Chauvin to continue to do what he did. And at the end of the day, we know the laws. We know the laws of that area, right? And there's certain things you do. But when it comes to arresting and detaining, and from other law enforcement agencies, as you saw that case, it was so much other different consulting from other agencies, and they all sat there and you seen, you know, saying what is the norm, what is the procedures. You know, when you get a person down in cuffs and when they have them detained, you go ahead and start moving. You checking for safety. You start checking for emergency services. If they're injured and need something, and you start go ahead and putting them in that vehicle, and you make sure you're monitoring them so they can get to the prison and jail and go ahead and get booked in. But for them to constantly keep, you know what I'm saying, violating the safety aspect of Mr. George Floyd, that was when that happened, and that's when he was charged and convicted for the manslaughter charges that he received. So in this case, it's the same thing, or was it justified? So again, we have to see more. Hopefully that they'll somehow push it to the DOJ. I think that's what they should do, and start looking into it. If the district attorney doesn't want to deal with it, he's saying no charges filed, they're going to shut and close it. I think DOJ, hopefully somebody will push it enough to get it to them and have them take it to the next level, state first, as of course to the state. You know, I think they already crossed that point with North Carolina district attorneys. I think they went to city, local, and state. Now getting the DOJ involved in the federal aspect and have them take a look at it and see if it was justified. See if it was, you know, if they you know what I'm saying, if they were correct in making that judgment call that there's no charges filed, that the shooting was justified. So that's what I think. And like I said, please leave your comments and see what happens. But I hope that this helps. I hope that this kind of clarifies and looking at some case law and understanding how things went before. And hopefully it ties into where the courts come in play. You know, again, court of appeals, district court, judicial courts, circuit court, and your Supreme Court, state Supreme. And then you have your Court of Appeals, U.S., and then you have your U.S. Supreme Court. And that point, when it gets to that point, they will look at everything and see and make a determination, and then also make some changes federally that states have to apply to, because we talked about what happened with that if they don't comply. So I hope this helps. I'm not going to delay any further. Hope all is well. Don't forget about the merchandise. You got shirts. You got everything you need. If you want a Rebuilding Community Trust shirt, definitely hit me up and in the comments. I will definitely get it shipped to you, taken care of. And y'all be blessed. Next video, kind of just going to be kind of hitting stuff in the news. Don't really have any teachings. If you have requests for things you want to know or things you might want to talk about, definitely let me know. And I will definitely get into it and go ahead and put something out on it. So until then, I'm going to be posting. Don't forget about Freedom Fighters channel. That's where the gospel of Jesus Christ and the things thereof when it comes to the Bible and the word and encouragement. Go to that channel, Freedom Fighters. And there's a lot of good material in there that people can use to uplift and reference the word of God. So be blessed and enjoy your day.